Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are merging the streams here this week where I'm going to provide what we've provided for so many years, which is the best coverage of the Ravens game and the Browns, as well as bringing you conversations with Jane Miller and Brandon Scott and lots of other people, including our councilman up in Perry Hall, David Marks. You can find all of that at Baltimore Positive as we expand the brand. Had a great conversation with Ken Singleton from the Yes Network. And, of course, you can find him running around Hunt Valley from time to time. You can find him out at WNST.net. This guy has been a recurring character here through Cavaliers wins and losses, Indians wins and losses, Browns losses, and mostly other losses. And sometimes there's some wins. He is at the Fan at 92.3 out in the land of Cleve. He is quite a collection of interesting memorabilia behind him. I've never had him on my Zoom thread. Daryl Ruiter, it is a pleasure to see inside the Ruitertorium that you have there, the Ruiter-Wrongatorium behind you. Dude, I'm going to make you I'm going to room rate you before all this is over with on our WNST channel. How you doing, my brother? You holding up, breathing all right out there, staying safe?
Yeah, I'm doing well. No complaints. Yeah, this used to be called the green room, but in the world of global pandemic, it's now the Zoom room. This is where I do all the business now.
Dude, I have all of that stuff that I could put behind me, and maybe it's time to put up my Geddy Lee autograph behind me, or even my Geddy Lee bobbleheads, in the kimonos, and put up my Van Halen, drumsticks up here, and get my wife's Prince pick. And I don't know, man. Like, you got a thing going. Like, I don't even want to talk about the Browns with you right now. I mean, what those baseballs over your shoulder are more interesting to me than the Browns right now, I think.
Well, I've got 4 cabinets full of bobbleheads. The Indians, I got a lot of former Indians autographs in the cabinet.
Bob Feller, the great Bob Feller.
Bob Feller's in there. Mudcat Grant's in there. Grady Sizemore's in there. Kenny Lofton's in there. Omar Vizquel, some of the 90s.
Is Carlos Baerga in there? No?
I do have a Carlos Baerga.
Nice.
Omar
Vizquel. See, I went to the games back in the 90s when you were a kid, right? I was at the Jake for that.
Yeah, so that's in the cabinet, and then on the wall I got all the major programs from the All-Star games in Cleveland, as well as
I even got to go in after the games and have Oral Hershiser tell me how he didn't cheat. I know he did. So, Browns, dude. I mean, you and I go way back. We go back and forth. I was giving you a hard time last year. I was in Cleveland and I saw the Hard Knocks. I was giving you grief a couple years ago about all that. Where's the franchise? And I guess for you, and I'll get to the point on this. You're out there. You're as embedded as any reporter I know, as like our Luke Jones here, or like any other good reporter. You're always with the team. This has been a culture shock for you. So I want to let you get on that horse. Just tell me what you've seen and what you haven't seen, because year after year, you've had to meet a new coach, meet a new coordinator, meet a new quarterback. I mean, that's been the story in Cleveland through all of this, right? That now even the access and the weirdness of a new coach is probably even weirder for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've had 2 face-to-face meetings with Kevin Stefanski since he was named Browns head coach. That was at his introductory press conference, and then he stopped by the annual Cleveland Sports Awards, which is a nice little fundraiser the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission does every year in late January. That's it. Everything else has been done virtually with Kevin. Seems like a great guy, but just you can't really get to know a guy over Zoom. Same thing with, a lot of the new players that they brought in this offseason. Everything's done virtually. Training camp obviously was a lot different. I'm sure it was different for you down in Baltimore.
Well, I'm wondering when I'm ever going to meet Patrick Queen. Like, whenever that happens, he might be a Hall of Famer by the time I meet him. I mean, he might be 3, like literally. I mean, I wonder when I walk up to Patrick Queen and say, hey, dude, you know what I mean? Like, that's building Baltimore Positive in the WNST classic part of what I'm doing. Like, all these old pictures with Ray Lewis and meeting players for the first time and being there on draft day and, all the stuff that you've experienced the last 10 years where they bring in the next great hope and they bring in the next player. And it marks years in your life. And when you've done it as long as we've done it, all of this is really weird. Like, I'm not going to the game Sunday. I found out Tuesday morning they're only giving WNST 1 press seat. So Luke's going to use the home one. I'm going to Houston next week. I mean, I don't know how weird. I haven't been to any of the baseball games. I'm banned from the baseball team. So Luke's been going out for 20 games sitting in an empty stadium. I mean, you've done that, right? You've gone to the Indians games, right? Like, so you've been one of the very few to experience just how weird all this is.
Yeah, it is. I covered the Indians when they got restarted before jumping back onto Browns when they restarted training camp in mid-August. And it is weird, no question about it. The ballpark is completely empty. There's only 20 people or so in the press box. We're all spaced apart. There's no air conditioning in the press box. The windows are open because they can't turn it on for, health and safety. It's part of the regulations for Major League Baseball. The Browns held a couple practices at First Energy Stadium. Similar, we're all spaced apart. Out in Berea, there were days we were 150 yards away from the action. You needed a telescope to see what they were doing on the field. So, and it's very uncomfortable too. We're not up close like we used to be on the sidelines and able to hear what's being said.
Daryl, I went to practice 2 Sundays ago. It was 100 degrees. It was in the middle. I mean, it was so hot, and the stadium was empty, and it made me, I don't want to say it made me sad. It made me feel like, what the hell am I doing here? I'm not getting anything out of this. There's no after practice. All the normal things where even if I observe something to ask about it, and what am I going to observe? I mean, I'm just trying to learn the players' names. There's not a lot of contact. Like all the way around. Lamar didn't even practice that day, right? Like, so he didn't even there. You know what I mean? So like, I live 6 blocks away. It's 6 blocks out my window. And I walked over there and I took a couple of pictures of Luke sitting there alone, covering it. And I just said, I'm hot, and I'm wearing a mask, and it's 100 degrees, and I'm outside, and I'm like, I'm not getting anything. I'm not gonna get anything. I'm just gonna go home and build my website. You know what I mean? And that's been my whole interaction, like literally. And Sunday, I'm gonna be apparently. I learned this morning, I'm gonna be on the couch with my wife, watching it on TV. Not that I'm not putting a beef up about any of that. Apparently, I'm going to Houston next week to sit on the roof. But man, dude, I'm thinking about like going to the airport, wearing a mask, landing, going to a hotel, getting a car in Houston where I went to Oilers. I was a huge Oiler fan, right? So it's emotional for me. The Astrodome, I've been to 2 Super Bowls there. My cousin's there. I usually see John McClane, and we go out and get nachos. You know what I'm talking about, Daryl. I got the best nachos anyway. We'll take you someplace socially distanced. So, all the stuff with McClane. So all the stuff I usually do, I'm going to stay in a courtyard by hobby. I'm going to go to the stadium. There's not going to be anybody there. There's not going to be smell of barbecue in the air. I'm going to take it's the highest press box in the world. It's like a Wonkavator. Like you go straight up, you're looking straight down. It's the worst view in the league. It looks like you're looking at the little metallic guys, right? And you're looking straight down.
Lucas Oil Stadium has the same thing.
It's higher than that. It's higher than Lucas Oil. It is. I mean, I've been in both many times. Like, it's really high up. And I'm thinking, and then I'm going to watch the game, and I'm going to put my computer screen on. I'm going to talk to John Harbaugh from wherever I am. I'm going to go back to my hotel room and do radio like this, and I'm going to get on a plane in the morning wearing a mask and go home. I mean, I'm going to do it just because I want to make sure it's as weird as I think it is because I want to write about, this experience of covering sports and having these pictures and these images, and I'm launching this new brand and all that's been sacred in my life about sports. And all of a sudden the Orioles are in the playoff race. If you haven't heard, they're 19-21. And the baseball's been so tepid to me, all of it. The hockey and Trotz is the Flyers got beaten. I'm not even excited about it. And I don't know how I'm going to feel at 1:00 on Sunday on my couch with my wife tweeting and watching the games, and how the sound and that Baker Mayfield's not going to be intimidated on 3rd down and like all of that. I'm happy they're playing in some way, but I have a feeling it's going to be really weird to go. And the Browns are letting people in, right? Like, they're playing high school football in Ohio right now, and they're like letting 6,000 people in apparently. So town to town, city to city, and I know you're apolitical in this one, but it is political, and I'll say that. But your experience is going to be different than mine, right? And my experience probably coming to Cleveland in December, one way or another, if we're in a war-torn country, might be different too, because I have a flight to Cleveland in December.
Yeah, the Browns did get approval, as did the Cincinnati Bengals, from the governor. They're permitted 6,000 fans. I had an idea that was going to happen. I didn't know how many fans they would be approved for, but I had a feeling they were going to have fans because in both of those practices at the stadium, On the Sunday afternoon practice, they had family and select team employees spread out in the club section on one side of the stadium. And then for their Friday night practice, that they basically did nothing. They just were doing it to show the state and the city and the health department that they can do this thing safely. When I walked in the stadium, I saw a couple concession stands open. And then I later found out my bosses were there. A couple of friends of mine who were season ticket holders were there, and they were spread out in the lower bowl of the stadium. And I was like, okay, they're going to have fans. It's just a matter of how many fans are going to be allowed, but it's going to be 6,000, and they will be spread out 1,500 fans in each quadrant of the stadium. Fans have to enter and exit from a specific gate. There are specific restrooms that they will be permitted to use, specific concessions.
See, that doesn't sound crazy, right? That doesn't sound like okay, but then everybody's going to be hitting the mothers and the bars and the, and I've walked that walk, brother. You know what I mean? I always stay down and say, I love your town. You know that. I mean, yeah. I give you a hard time, but I love my Cleveland trip, and I love seeing you there. And I always tell you where I had dinner the night before, and I'm always eating at places and doing things that, that I love. And I can only imagine, and I know how important football is to your people, Mansfield, all that stuff, right? I think the real concern is how many people are going to try to pile into the flats, right? I mean, for that. That's really the big story.
Well, there is no tailgating. The Muni lot's going to be closed this year, at least to start the season. The mayor went ahead and extended, as he called it, the emergency order. So there's no gatherings of over 10 people permitted. So they won't be all driving up in their brown and orange Winnebagos, hanging out there, pounding a 6-pack or a 12-pack before they walk over to the stadium, which is good. It's a safety thing at this point. But it is very weird. I don't go out. The only time I go out is to go to the grocery store and to drive out to Berea to cover practice, or if I got to go down to Progressive Field to cover a game. Other than that, I don't leave the house. I don't dine out. I hate not being able to support local businesses in that regard, but it's a safety thing. I got to make sure that I do everything in my power to stay safe. And anytime I leave the house, I got the mask on, I wash my hands, I got hand sanitizer on me at all times. And you do the little things just to, do your part to try and stay safe. But it is a very weird time. It's very uncomfortable to go out and cover stuff. I've never been as uncomfortable in my life as I've been over these last couple of months. And that's not a complaint. That's just, human nature and the reality. But, when you're 150 yards or 75 yards away from what they're doing on the practice field, and it's hard to see what they're doing without, looking through a pair of binoculars, which then you're zeroed in on something and you lose the wide view. You can't hear what's going on in practice. You can't hear the coaches cussing out the players.
And you're wondering what the hell you're doing there.
Yeah, and it's a very antiseptic environment. Then you're racing home because you got to jump on Zoom so you can get coach and the players after practice and that. It's different. No question about it. I'm not complaining. We all have to adjust in this new environment. I'm thrilled that they're going to try and play a season. I pray that there's no outbreaks, unlike we've seen in Major League Baseball. Quite frankly, I'm surprised Major League Baseball's still going considering the volume of outbreak that they have had. They've had, 3 teams have it. So I'm glad.
Well, it wrecks the season, right? Like it
really does.
Look, we haven't talked much about this last month in the NFL, because of their red flag as not, they're going to forge through this and whatever happens. I mean, I was convinced they shouldn't have played in June. In July. I'm convinced it's still not safe. I'm convinced I can get on a plane and get in and out of Houston in a day and not and stay away from people in the same way I've kind of stayed away from people in Baltimore. Yeah. I have certainly stopped doing most of the normal stuff I do, but I'm not so weirded out that I won't go to the Royal Farms and bring home some chicken. You know what I mean? And Purell myself on the way in and out and do those types of things. But as far as communing with people, that just has not been anything that's on my mind. And I think football makes people want to get together. And I think that's really – certainly in the South for the SEC and playing football and the political side of all of that. The real concern is it's designed to bring people together. That's what concerts and sports and dinners and restaurants, that's been the most tragic part of all of this for our souls, right? Like the things that bring us together, we can't do right now. Somewhere in there, there's a parable or something, right?
Yeah. And the NBA has proven, and same thing with the NHL and Major League Soccer, that the bubble stuff works, right? What do you know? Safety precautions actually work. If you wear a mask, if you're socially distant, if you limit the volume of people that you're around, you're getting tested on a regular basis. Lo and behold, no cases, right? And it's unfortunate that as a society that a lesson hasn't been learned here.
Well, we'd all be at the football game this week if we figured this out 8 months ago. Like, aside, and I'm going to continue to bring that up, especially as, the election ballots are getting filled out, that if you want to know why it's screwed up, it's because we failed. We failed the test. We failed the plague test when it came to our shores because of our leadership, because of our ideology, because of our whatever that Americanness is. We failed. And the failure has never been more evident than the Baltimore Ravens can't open their stadium on Sunday. And that's a fact, Jack. And that's
you started out with what? The Ravens were initially announced, and I'll give the Browns credit in this regard. Because fans here in Cleveland were getting frustrated. They weren't hearing a lot from the Browns regarding fans. The Ravens announced originally, 15,000 fans.
12 and 7 and this. And I never believed any of it. I never believed any of it,
And then they came back and said, well, we can only have 7,500. And then they came out and said, well, now we're not going to have fans. The Browns, they wait until the last minute, and now they're going to have like I said, the 6,000 fans. But
I never believed people were going to the games. I am astonished that the Browns are open in their stadium for the reasons I brought out, not because I don't think 1,500 people can sit in 4 quadrants and figure it out. I do. In the same way I think people can go to drive-ins and watch movies and watch concerts and figure it out. Not that I want to go to a friggin' drive-in and watch a concert. I've been to 3 music events in 8 months, Daryl, right? I mean, I drove to Philly to see Tommy Conwell. He played outside of a bar, and we all sat in our cars, on lawn chairs, kind of like lawn seating. And I did that twice with Ed Lauer at the Admirals Cup, the NFL Sport. Like, I miss it, but I know you can do it. I just don't know that it's – I think it's going to be good for our society when they play football this weekend, and maybe bad. I mean, we'll find out the aftermath of all of this and the places where they open and don't open in Sturgis and what that represents and the hoo-ha they had on the lawn, the illegal Hatch Act breaking hoo-ha they had on the lawn down in D.C. 2 weeks ago, where that's going to go. But for baseball, they're going to finish this. They're going to have a World Series, right? Like the NBA, they're playing, which leads everybody to believe there's going to be a Super Bowl. And if you're in Baltimore and you read Peter King and others, that we're the best team. So from that standpoint, at 1 o'clock on Sunday, I fully expect the Ravens to kick the snot out of the Browns, and I fully expect to be pretty engaged in Lamar's stats and who's running and who's passing. And at 4 o'clock, the weirdness of doing a Zoom call and the weirdness of doing – and then on Monday, I'm just going to do radio like I always do, and I'm going to use – so I guess the part of eating the ribs and driving to the stadium and having the beer and sitting in the traffic and the things that people are used to, every game's going to feel like a road game that you watch in your fan cave with your family. And that's the way people are going to experience it. And if it's decent enough on TV and you can gamble on it, fantasy on it, eat Rofo chicken with it, it's going to be a good experience for most Americans who love football, and that's you and me, right?
Yeah, and what was interesting covering Indians games is hearing everything that's said on the field, which was really, it was like being at it's like sitting and watching a high school game or a little league game, right? Where you're just sitting there right next to the field. You can hear everything that's said, hear guys sliding into bases, which was really weird because I hadn't heard that sound since.
Number one curse word in baseball is horse shit. So just right, no doubt about that. I think that's the one you don't get thrown out for. So yes,
and I have heard a few of the magic words that got guys thrown out. But yeah, I'm interested to hear Baker Mayfield's cadence, and maybe they're going to do they've been talking about here in Cleveland that they may still use the silent count because, well, you don't want to be giving away what you're doing. And even though there's going to be nobody in the stadium, it's going to be so weird watching that. I watched a couple of the college games over the weekend. Some of them had fans, some of them didn't. And it was weird watching those games where there was nobody in the stadium except for the participants and the coaches. But hey, this is the environment we're at. Maybe the NFL teams will take a page out of what some baseball teams have done, and they'll put cardboard cutouts in the stands or whatever. But yeah, it's good that they're going to play. I have no idea what to expect Sunday. I know you expect the Ravens to have their way with the Browns, as they typically normally do, with last year being the exception. But I don't know what to expect from the Browns. Even based on what I was able to see at training camp, which, by the way, wasn't a lot. It was very difficult assessing where this team was or evaluating what they're trying to accomplish because they're going against each other. They're trying stuff out. Nestor, they were doing installs a week ago, okay? They were doing stuff a week ago that normally they would have had done in May. And that's the other part of the bizarreness of this whole situation is we're in late August, and Kevin Stefanski's finishing up the installs of his offensive and defensive systems. And, I've been saying, and I've been taking heat locally for it, and I don't care. I don't think the Browns are ready. And that's not, everyone takes that as a criticism.
But we're going to find out at 1 o'clock on Sunday. They're going to have to chase Lamar Jackson around, right?
Right.
Like, literally.
I'm not hating on them. It's just the reality. When you're doing installs in late August of your offensive systems and you've had maybe 2 weeks tops to fine-tune those installs, and then all of a sudden you got to go down and play the reigning league MVP and a team that only lost twice. Granted, you were one of the teams that were able to beat them.
And they know where to stand. The Ravens know their playbook.
Right, exactly. So it's not that I'm hating on the Browns or I'm rooting against them. It's just the fact of the matter is it's all new once again. The Browns will pay the price again of having to hit the reset button because they hired the wrong people for the millionth time.
Daryl Ruiter, he is right or wrong, and usually right when it comes to the Browns. And I think he was right with that comment because every year we get together and, I remember the days of Mike Pettin.
He is in your Browns coaching Hall of Fame. Since Mike Pettin, we've had the not-so-great Hugh Jackson, the bumbling, fumbling Freddie Kitchens, and now we're on to Kevin Stefanski with a little –
The not-so-great Hugh Jackson. What was his record? I know you know this off the top of your head. What was his final record?
I think it was like 333-1 or something like that. It was not very good, or 4-3. Worst coaching stint in NFL history. Congratulations, Hugh.
Who was the quarterback that you really thought was going to do it that didn't? Like, of all of them, like
Brandon Weeden. I remember watching him in practice, and it was a lesson learned not to ooh and ah at a guy in practice, right? I remember he did that ESPN Sports Science thing where he was throwing footballs at clay pigeons. They were shooting the clay pigeons, and he was able to bust them with footballs. And I'm like,
that's impressive if you're from Parma. It really is, right?
I'm like, I can't wait to see this guy on the field, right? I've never seen a quarterback that accurate. Then you go to practice and you watch him, and he's not getting hit at all, right? So I'm watching him, and he's just carving the defense and throwing darts at receivers and that. And then we get to the preseason. And then I had the old bleep moment where I'm like, okay, maybe this guy isn't it. Because once he started getting pressure, like he couldn't throw it into the ocean standing on the beach. So Brandon Weeden was the guy, though, that I thought had it and was going to be the guy. And he ended up being one of a not-so-exclusive 30-man club. So I think Baker Mayfield is it. I do. And I've seen tangible evidence on game day that he's it. But again, leave it to the Browns to draft a franchise quarterback and turn him into scrambled eggs, because in 3 years, he's on his third head coach, third offensive coordinator, third offensive system that
first plague,
and he can't grow. He's not been able to grow with this franchise and with this organization. And I feel bad for Baker Mayfield as a professional, because Lamar Jackson's had the same coach since being drafted. He's been able to grow into a league MVP. He's been able to help turn the Ravens into a league.
Throw Deshaun Watson and Mahomes in there, and and all the rest, right? Literally.
I understand that, but I'm just keeping it present company here with what you guys get to watch.
But when you get a good organization and you have a capable quarterback, even when you have a bad organization and a capable quarterback, Phillip Rivers hangs out, you know what I mean, and goes to another city with it. But when you have that kind of transcendent talent, what Pete Carroll has done in Seattle. I mean,
Absolutely.
if
And
you have the player, you have to put the coaches around him. And I don't know that Lamar Jackson, first off, Lamar Jackson, every team in the league passed on him. Let's start with that, right? So nobody really wanted him. Nobody really thought we're going to build a team around him. The Ravens did. And that's the first thing I bring up with everyone. But then once you build around him, you got to build around them. And everything needs to be, and everything about the way they've drafted. And if he rips his knee up this Sunday at 1:30, that's the way it goes, right? But that's how you do it, and that can only be done by having one philosophy. And this is where I really think the Ravens put their foot down, not just on the Browns this week, but just on – they always pride themselves on being a great organization, and the Ray Rice thing aside, the Ray Lewis thing was 25 years ago. But the way they've run the place in recent times and the way Steve wants it, Dick wants it, and the stability they've had, and DaCosta being groomed for this, and the kinds of players they've had, the COVID thing really plays into John's strength as a leader in you're not going to touch gas pumps, you're not going to touch people, you're going to come in, you're not going to screw it up, you're not going to cost us the season.
Right.
That this is where John brings that family thing in, that is a Harbaugh thing, that's a collegiate thing to some degree, and they're going to figure this out for 20 weeks. And that, aside from Lamar being great, or Greg Roman has great plays, or Calais Campbell is going to get after the kind of players they have, I think the way they're going to run the thing is really going to give them some oxygen that other organizations don't have. And if there's going to be a season and there's not going to be a war, and the guy running the country doesn't create a war, and the post office ballots are counted, and he's, exiting, and we have a normal country in December and January, the Ravens stand to be, especially in a 7-playoff AFC, right? 17 playoff, that they'll play football in January. Whether we'll be there, whether the plague will be, I don't know. But if they keep playing football as a league, the Ravens will probably win a lot of football games this year. And for that, I feel blessed that I'm going to wake up in October, if we're still playing football, we're going to have a team that's relevant.
Yeah, and I think the Browns have the potential to be relevant. For, we've talked about over the years the talent disparity, especially when you talk about the Ravens, playing the Browns. There had always been a talent disparity. I would say last year was the first time that the Browns actually looked like they belonged on the same field with the Baltimore Ravens. And I think this year's same thing. They've built a team around Baker Mayfield. This offense is built around Baker. They brought in Austin Hooper in the offseason. The offensive line last year was a disaster. So what do? They go out and spend $40+ million to bring in Jack Conklin at right tackle. They go ahead and they re-sign J.C. Treader at center. They go ahead and then draft Jedrick Wills to play left tackle. So this offense is built for Baker. But again, when you're constantly churning things over, it's going to take time to settle in. And if they can develop some sort of organizational cohesion, I think that Baker Mayfield, with this supporting cast, can do a lot of really great things. But growing pains early in the season with a new offensive system, getting to know your new teammates and all those things, that's going to play a factor. I think the Browns are going to be a better second half team of the season than they are the first half of the season, because they got to work the kinks out. That's just the reality of the situation. I like Kevin Stefanski. To your point about what John Harbaugh has done down there in Baltimore, I think Stefanski, for a guy that had to walk in and try and stabilize the ship of a floundering franchise, I think his leadership's been outstanding this offseason. The way he's handled the COVID-19 situation and brought his players together has been outstanding. The professionalism, a couple of weeks ago, he got a false positive. A bunch of his assistant coaches were false positive. I think the Browns had that, when they had half the league was affected by that lab in New Jersey, the Browns were like one of the most affected teams of that, with all the false positives. And he's handled the social justice initiatives with his players and within his locker room very well. So he's had everything.
Well, it comes from great stock in Minnesota. I'm a big fan of Zim. I know Zimmer pretty well, and but they all came from great stock to some degree. I mean, right. They could have kept Mike Pettin there the last 5 years, and they might have had something if they could create stability. They had a good coach. They've had a couple of good coaches in between all of this. They've had a couple of turds too. But I'm not convinced that half of the coaches The coaches were never the problem. I've always been convinced it's Haslam.
Well, it starts at the top. I'm a believer in everything starts at the top and rolls downhill. And attitude usually reflects leadership. And when you have people behind the scenes that are not rowing the boat in the same direction, which has often been the case, these are the problems you have. Andrew Berry being brought back. I will say this, though. For as dysfunctional as the Browns have been under the Haslam ownership group, I think it says something, though, when a guy who left to further his development in the front office goes to Philadelphia for a year, is willing to come back and work for you. I think that there is something positive there. If I'm looking for a sliver of hope, a light at the end of the tunnel, I think that was very positive that Andrew Berry came back. And now he's the EVP of football ops as well as the general manager. And Kevin Stefanski and him seem to really legitimately, I mean, they do finish each other's sentences. When you talk to both of them, they speak in the same manner. They have the same vocabulary. It's really weird because we've not had that in Cleveland. And I'm as optimistic as ever. I feel good about the talent that's on the field. I just think that the reality, Nestor, is it's just going to take time for things to gel and come together. And I have said on my station up here in Cleveland, and again, the fans don't want to hear it because after 20-plus years of garbage, they're tired of being patient. But I really believe that if there's some patience exercised with the growing pains, and there's going to be some here, especially in this bizarre year, I really think this is the Browns' best chance since 1999 of turning into what the Ravens and what the Steelers and what the Patriots and what the Chiefs and Seahawks and the successful teams that are stable and that win are. But it's going to, again, Kevin Stefanski's going to need time. Baker Mayfield's going to need some time. But it's a big year for Baker, because he's going into his third year. We all know what happens in that fourth offseason for players in the rookie contracts. They want to get that contract extension. Myles Garrett just got taken care of. But, Baker's got to prove that he's worthy of those big dollars this year. And unfortunately, the deck is sort of stacked against him because, again, third head coach, 3 years, third offensive system in as many years, third offensive coordinator as many years, another cast of new teammates. It's not easy playing for the Cleveland Browns, but I think Baker's got the talent to be successful. Just hopefully the organization is able to finally provide him what he needs behind the scenes.
Daryl Ruiter is a right or wrong fan. He's had a 92.3. The Fan in Cleveland's been my friend for going on a decade, and we've talked about a lot of woeful football stuff. Last thing for you, because I am room rating you on our WNST Zoom camera. I'm assuming that's a chair from the old Municipal. I remember the colors of sort of that mustard, Cleveland mustard color. They had the red ones and the blue ones and the mustard ones. What section, seat, anything? Any idea or no?
Seat number 12.
Yeah, I see that.
And the right above it in the frame are the tickets. The sheet of tickets from the last weekend at Cleveland Municipal Stadium, where they didn't tear the stubs off. They embossed them so that you could preserve them. So I have that. I got a bunch of pins from over the years. We talked about all the Indians baseballs. I got a bunch of bobbleheads.
God, I see the Indians bobblehead there from the mascot, the big belly. Yeah,
slider. So yeah, slider. I got a bunch of stuff. It's kind of, I tried to, we're doing this Zoom stuff, so I figured, what, I don't want to do Zooms like sitting on a couch and the room looks boring and what. Thought, jazz it up a little bit. What
I could do is get my 1995 and 97 World Series press passes and hold those up for you and show you that I was at the Jake back in the day. And
well, you can kind
of Robbie Alomar home run was at the Cheers bar at the airport. I mean, I've had good times in Cleveland. Always good times.
Kind of see it over where I'm pointing. This is my Cavs championship.
Yeah, I see LeBron going in there. Yeah, I see
the entire wall is dedicated to the Cavaliers winning a championship. And it was funny. I was talking to someone at the Browns. They were, commenting on my Zoom wall, and they said, "Man, you got a lot of Cavs and Indian stuff up there." And I said, "Well, if you guys ever do something, maybe I'll put some Brown stuff up there. But you ain't worthy of my wall yet."
Put Jim Brown on the wall. Cut it out. All right.
I got a Jim Brown little figurine
I'm
behind
just
me.
making sure you got Jim Brown. Is Brian Sipe back there? Any
No,
chance of that?
I got Joe Thomas bobblehead, 10,363 consecutive snaps, the future Hall of Famer. I do have a leg lamp bobblehead.
This is what I keep here. This is on the set always. Arthur B. We lost him 8 years ago this week, actually. So Art stays back here with me. So that's what I keep on the set. So if that matters. See my leotard too. It's great on the camera. It's awesome. Oh,
Yeah.
what are you pulling up here? You pulling up a Muck Fodell? Hold on. What is that?
No, that's.
See, I keep Cleveland here all the time.
Yeah, that is the Cavs gave this away one year. It is the leg lamp bobble.
Look at that.
Yeah, so
I like that. So, by the way, I made it to the Christmas Story house last year. Did you know this?
Yeah, you said you were going to go.
Yeah. There's a great place in Tremont that I get breakfast. It's a Guy Fieri place, but I've been going there before that, believe it or not. Yeah. Incredible bake. I mean, maybe the best breakfast place in America. Literally the best place. My favorite place to go.
We got a few of those in Cleveland.
Man, it's fantastic. And you can walk there through the neighborhood, just out through the back and across the highway. There's a walkway and
Did
a beautiful.
You go to the Bumpus house too? Because they bought the house next door.
Yeah, it was early in the day. It was Sunday. It was a game day. Yeah. It was when I came in last year.
Well, they turned Bumpus house into a B&B. So you can stay.
You can stay there. Yeah.
Stay there. Yeah, and the Christmas Story house too. They have a program where you can stay in the Christmas Story house at times as well. But yeah,
I went to the gift shop across the street. It's all overwrought and awesome and all that. This leg lamp was a gift from my ex-girlfriend 20 years ago, Carrie, and it was a Christmas gift that she gave to me before I knew my wife, and it's always been around. And it glows red up top. And when I walked into the Christmas Story gift shop, it's like a whole wall of them. And I'm like,
oh, yeah.
It doesn't feel so special anymore. The fact that I could get one for $149. But thank you, Carrie. Appreciate you. Hey, Daryl, appreciate you, man. And I hope to get out to Cleveland. I hope to, you get to the ballpark early, but I'll get up early and meet you for breakfast if we can socially. There is an outdoor area there. They serve apple cider. I mean, I want to come to Cleveland in December. I just want the Browns to be, 3-11 like they usually are.
Yeah, I'm thinking that December 14th, not a great time to do patios in Cleveland, Ohio.
I'll put some socks on and gloves and quit your whining. You're from Cleveland. You're not from Cincinnati. All right, be good. See you, Daryl.
Thanks, Nestor. Great.
Daryl Ruiter. He's Right or Wrong fan at 92.3 in the land of Cleve with a that's the best Zoom we've ever done here. I don't want to fill Ryder's head with too much, but he has the best room rating. Ryder's the winner so far, but we're just getting into things. We're merging WNST with Baltimore Positive. We're doing a whole new web platform. It's going to be incredible. I hope to have it out by the end of the week, if not by next week. I'm not making promises that I can't keep, but we are getting close. I would say we're in the red zone, like literally in the red, we're in the Taharka red zone to getting it to the finish line. The Pizza John's red zone. Royal Farms isn't red, they're blue. I don't know. Do you have any other red sponsors? I don't know. Raskin Global, red zone. There you go. I am Nestor, nasty at WNST.net, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. Cole Roofing's got a red logo. Yeah, State Farm, they're red. We never stop talking. Browns, Ravens, football, good stuff, and Baltimore Positive. Stay with us.